Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get into the story. This is a story about a woman named Anna, a young nurse, who was assigned a very special patient, a man who had once been the youngest billionaire in the city. Grant Carter, the CEO of Carter Enterprises, had been in a coma for over a year after a devastating car accident. His life, once filled with headlines and power, had been reduced to a silent existence in a private hospital suite, surrounded by machines that kept him alive. Anna was new to the hospital, and this case was going to be unlike anything she had experienced before. She had heard the stories about Grant Carter, the ruthless businessman who built an empire in his 20s, a man who was known to be cold and untouchable. But now, he was nothing more than a shell of the person he once was. The nurses on his case had long given up, seeing him only as a body to care for, a task to get through. But Anna, driven by her strong sense of duty and a deep desire to help, was different. When Anna first entered the room, it was a scene she could hardly prepare for. The room was luxurious, far beyond anything she had seen in the hospital: dark oak furniture, expensive curtains, and soft, dimmed lighting. At the center of it all was Grant, lying unconscious in his bed, his body covered in tubes and wires. He looked almost peaceful, as if asleep. But Anna knew better. This was no peaceful rest. This was a man trapped in a coma, unable to escape his own body. She approached him cautiously, trying to make sure that everything was in order. As she adjusted the foredrip and checked the heart monitor, she couldn't help but notice how handsome he still looked, despite the circumstances. His strong jawline, dark hair, and once powerful presence were still visible beneath the layers of medical equipment. But it was all just an illusion, a memory of a life he no longer lived. Over the course of the next few days, Anna carried out her duties. She bathed him, changed his sheets, and took care of his basic needs. But unlike the other nurses who just went through the motions, Anna spoke to him. She told him about her day, her hopes, her dreams, as if he could hear her. Perhaps it was foolish, but something about him made her believe he was still there, somewhere deep inside. One evening, as Anna was wiping his forehead with a warm cloth, something unexpected happened. His fingers twitched. It was so subtle that she almost missed it, but it was enough to make her heart race. For a moment, she thought she was imagining it. But then, it happened again. His fingers moved slightly, and Anna gasped, staring at him in disbelief. She quickly pressed the emergency button, calling for the doctor. Within moments, a team of medical professionals rushed into the room, checking his vitals, running tests. The results were astonishing. There was increased brain activity. Grant Carter, the man who had been in a coma for over a year, was starting to wake up. But it wasn't just his physical recovery that fascinated Anna, it was the way his eyes locked onto hers. When he finally opened his eyes, still blurry and unfocused, his gaze seemed to linger on her, as though he was recognizing her, even though they had never met before. Grant tried to speak, but his voice was weak, barely a whisper. Anna leaned in closer, her heart pounding in her chest. "Anna," he whispered, his voice hoarse from months of disuse. "I know you." Anna was stunned. How could he know her? She had never met him before in her life. "You're awake," she said, barely able to comprehend what was happening. "You're really awake." Grant nodded slowly, his gaze still locked on hers. "I remember you," he said again, his voice growing stronger. It was in that moment, as she stood beside his bed, that Anna realized this wasn't just a simple recovery. Something deep inside Grant had been stirred by her presence, and she couldn't help but feel a connection, one that had nothing to do with her role as a nurse, but something much deeper. As the doctors continued their work, Anna stayed by his side, her mind racing. She couldn't explain the strange feeling that had come over her. This was a man who had been so unreachable, so cold, and yet now, there was something vulnerable in his eyes, something that told her he was no longer the powerful CEO who controlled everything, but a man who needed help, who needed someone to trust. And in that moment, Anna knew that she would be the one to help him. Not just as a nurse, but as someone who had the potential to unlock the man he had been before the accident. The man who had built an empire, who had lost so much, and now, perhaps, needed to find himself again. But what she didn't know yet was that helping him would change her life forever. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get into the story. This is a story about a woman named Anna, a young nurse, who was assigned a very special patient, a man who had once been the youngest billionaire in the city. Grant Carter, the CEO of Carter Enterprises, had been in a coma for over a year after a devastating car accident. His life, once filled with headlines and power, had been reduced to a silent existence in a private hospital suite, surrounded by machines that kept him alive. Anna was new to the hospital, and this case was going to be unlike anything she had experienced before. She had heard the stories about Grant Carter, the ruthless businessman who built an empire in his 20s, a man who was known to be cold and untouchable. But now, he was nothing more than a shell of the person he once was. The nurses on his case had long given up, seeing him only as a body to care for, a task to get through. But Anna, driven by her strong sense of duty and a deep desire to help, was different. When Anna first entered the room, it was a scene she could hardly prepare for. The room was luxurious, far beyond anything she had seen in the hospital. Dark oak furniture, expensive curtains, and soft, dimmed lighting. At the center of it all was Grant, lying unconscious in his bed, his body covered in tubes and wires. He looked almost peaceful, as if asleep. But Anna knew better. This was no peaceful rest. This was a man trapped in a coma, unable to escape his own body. She approached him cautiously, trying to make sure that everything was in order. As she adjusted the drip and checked the heart monitor, she couldn't help but notice how handsome he still looked, despite the circumstances. His strong jawline, dark hair, and once powerful presence were still visible beneath the layers of medical equipment. But it was all just an illusion, a memory of a life he no longer lived. Over the course of the next few days, Anna carried out her duties. She bathed him, changed his sheets, and took care of his basic needs. But unlike the other nurses who just went through the motions, Anna spoke to him. She told him about her day, her hopes, her dreams, as if he could hear her. Perhaps it was foolish, but something about him made her believe he was still there, somewhere deep inside. One evening, as Anna was wiping his forehead with a warm cloth, something unexpected happened. His fingers twitched. It was so subtle that she almost missed it, but it was enough to make her heart race. For a moment, she thought she was imagining it. But then, it happened again. His fingers moved slightly, and Anna gasped, staring at him in disbelief. She quickly pressed the emergency button, calling for the doctor. Within moments, a team of medical professionals rushed into the room, checking his vitals, running tests. The results were astonishing. There was increased brain activity. Grant Carter, the man who had been in a coma for over a year, was starting to wake up. But it wasn't just his physical recovery that fascinated Anna, it was the way his eyes locked onto hers. When he finally opened his eyes, still blurry and unfocused, his gaze seemed to linger on her, as though he was recognizing her, even though they had never met before. Grant tried to speak, but his voice was weak, barely a whisper. Anna leaned in closer, her heart pounding in her chest. "Anna," he whispered, his voice hoarse from months of disuse. "I know you." Anna was stunned. How could he know her? She had never met him before in her life. "You're awake," she said, barely able to comprehend what was happening. "You're really awake." Grant nodded slowly, his gaze still locked on hers. I remember you, he said again, his voice growing stronger. It was in that moment, as she stood beside his bed, that Anna realized this wasn't just a simple recovery. Something deep inside Grant had been stirred by her presence, and she couldn't help but feel a connection, one that had nothing to do with her role as a nurse, but something much deeper. As the doctors continued their work, Anna stayed by his side, her mind racing. She couldn't explain the strange feeling that had come over her. This was a man who had been so unreachable, so cold, and yet now, there was something vulnerable in his eyes. Something that told her he was no longer the powerful CEO who controlled everything, but a man who needed help, who needed someone to trust. And in that moment, Anna knew that she would be the one to help him. Not just as a nurse, but as someone who had the potential to unlock the man he had been before the accident. The man who had built an empire, who had lost so much, and now, perhaps, needed to find himself again. But what she didn't know yet was that helping him would change her life forever. As the days passed, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Grant's recovery was slow, but it was progress, small, but significant. Each day, she sat by his bed, reading to him, telling him stories, speaking as though he could hear her. The doctors were amazed at the slight improvement in his condition, but Anna knew it was more than just physical recovery. There was something more profound happening, something that connected her to him in a way she couldn't explain. It was during one of these sessions that Grant did something unexpected. His eyes, still blurry, tracked her movements as she adjusted his pillow. Anna smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face, when she suddenly felt his hand move. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. This wasn't a reflex. It was deliberate. Grant's hand, though weak, wrapped around her wrist. The sensation sent a wave of shock through Anna, but also a strange sense of comfort. His grip wasn't strong, but it was there, alive, real. His eyes met hers, and for the first time since his accident, there was recognition in them. Not complete awareness, but enough to make Anna's heart skip a beat. Anna, he whispered again, his voice barely audible but undeniably real. I know you. Anna stood there, her hand still in his, unsure of what to do. The doctors had warned her not to get her hopes up, that this could just be a fleeting moment of consciousness, a muscle reflex. But this felt different. He was looking at her like he knew her, like he was aware of her presence, even if he couldn't fully understand why. Grant, Anna whispered, her voice trembling. You're really awake. Grant's gaze softened, and he gave a slight nod. His lips parted as if to speak, but his voice failed him. Instead, he squeezed her hand again, weakly but firmly. Anna could feel the warmth of his skin, the pulse beneath his fingers. It was a connection that transcended the hospital room, the machines, the tubes. It felt real. The doctors rushed in, and the room became a whirlwind of activity. Anna stepped back, her mind racing. Was this the moment he would finally wake up fully? Or was it just a momentary blip on a long road to recovery? The team worked quickly, checking his vitals, running more tests. It was clear to Anna that this was a breakthrough, though no one could say for sure what it meant just yet. Later that day, as Anna sat alone in the break room, her thoughts were a whirlwind. How could this be happening? How could a man who had been so detached from the world, so cold, so untouchable, showing signs of something so human? She had heard about Grant Carter before, of course. The CEO who had built his empire from nothing. The man who had everything: money, power, respect. But now, here he was, vulnerable and fragile, reaching out to her in a way that made her question everything she thought she knew about him. Anna couldn't help but feel an odd pull towards him. She had always believed in the power of human connection, that even in the darkest moments, a simple act of kindness could change everything. But this was different. She wasn't just a nurse helping a patient. This felt like something more, something deeper. Was it possible that he could have feelings for her, too? Or was she reading too much into this strange situation? Her thoughts were interrupted when Dr. Harris walked in. He had a concerned expression on his face, his brows furrowed as he glanced at Anna. How is he? Anna asked, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. Dr. Harris shook his head slightly, the skepticism evident. It's too early to tell, Anna. Don't get too excited. It's a good sign, yes, but we can't make any conclusions yet. Anna nodded, but she didn't fully believe him. There was something in Grant's eyes that told her he was coming back to life, piece by piece. And it wasn't just the medical recovery that fascinated her, it was the way his presence seemed to draw her in, the way he seemed to need her in a way that made her heart ache. The next few days were a blur. Grant's condition stabilized, but he was still weak, unable to speak more than a few words at a time. He would squeeze her hand every time she came into the room, his eyes following her every movement, and each time, Anna couldn't help but smile. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that she couldn't stop being there for him. She had become more than just his nurse. She had become someone he could trust, someone who understood the unspoken emotions behind every glance. As the week went by, Grant's progress continued at a steady pace. His speech came back slowly, but he could form sentences now, albeit shaky. Anna continued to visit him every day, talking to him, telling him about her life outside the hospital, even though she knew he couldn't remember anything. But as time passed, she began to wonder, when would he remember who he truly was? Would he still be the same man once he woke up fully, or would this experience change him in ways they both couldn't anticipate? One evening, after finishing her shift, Anna sat in the quiet of the hospital's staff lounge, contemplating everything that had happened. She couldn't deny that she felt a connection to Grant, an emotional bond that had grown stronger with each passing day. But what did this mean? Was she just his nurse, or was there something more between them? Anna didn't have the answers, but she knew one thing for certain: her life was about to change in ways she couldn't predict. And somewhere deep inside, she couldn't help but hope that this change would bring them closer together, not just as patient and nurse, but as something much more real. As she stood up to leave, she glanced back at the door to Grant's room. She didn't know what the future held, but she was ready to face it with him. As the days went on, Anna could feel the weight of Grant's presence growing stronger. He was awake, but still not fully aware of everything around him. The doctors had warned her not to get too excited. This recovery could take time, and no one was sure when or if he would ever fully regain his memory. But Anna felt something, a pull she couldn't quite explain. She knew that she wasn't just caring for a patient anymore, something deeper was happening between them. Grant's progress was slow but steady. He was able to hold brief conversations now, though his voice was weak. Each day, he seemed to remember more. At times, his eyes would follow her movements around the room, and though he still couldn't speak much, there was a look in his eyes that told her he was trying to reach out to her in ways words couldn't convey. One morning, as Anna entered his room to check on him, she found him awake, looking out the window. His gaze was distant, but when he heard her footsteps, he turned toward her. "Anna," he said, his voice still hoarse but filled with recognition. "I remember you." Anna smiled softly, her heart skipping a beat. "I'm glad you do," she said, sitting beside his bed. Grant's eyes softened, and for a moment, there was silence between them. Then, he broke it. "I don't remember much," he said, his voice faltering. "But I remember your face. I feel like I've known you for a long time." Anna's heart swelled with emotion. "You have," she said quietly, "you just don't remember yet." Grant nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. It was as if he was trying to piece together the fragments of his life, and somehow, she had become a part of that puzzle. The more time they spent together, the stronger the connection became. Each day, Anna would share little details about herself, her dreams of becoming a doctor, her childhood, her family. Things that had once felt distant and unimportant now seemed to matter more than ever. She felt herself opening up to Grant in ways she hadn't expected. He was no longer just her patient. He was someone she was beginning to care for, deeply. One evening, as Anna sat by his bedside, she found herself lost in thought, staring at him as he slept peacefully. He looked so vulnerable, so fragile, and yet, there was something about him that made her feel a sense of peace. It wasn't just the fact that he was improving. It was something about the way he looked at her, the way he trusted her. "You're getting stronger," Anna whispered, mostly to herself. She had no idea if he could hear her, but the words felt important. "You're going to be okay." As if on cue, Grant's eyes fluttered open. He turned his head slightly, his gaze locking onto hers. "Anna," he said, his voice still weak but steady. "I don't want to forget you." Anna's breath caught in her throat. "You won't," she said softly. "I'm not going anywhere." But as the days went by, Anna couldn't help but feel the pull of a deeper question: what would happen when Grant was fully recovered? Would he remember everything? Would he remember her? And, most importantly, would their bond remain? The thought lingered in her mind as she continued her work, helping him through his rehabilitation. Each day, she watched as his strength returned, bit by bit. But the emotional connection that had formed between them was undeniable. She found herself thinking about him when she wasn't with him, wondering what would happen once he was well enough to leave the hospital. And then, one afternoon, the moment she had been both dreading and hoping for arrived. Grant was sitting up in bed, looking out the window. The room was filled with the soft hum of the machines, the distant sounds of the hospital. He looked at Anna, and this time, there was no confusion in his eyes. "Anna," he said, his voice steady, "I remember everything." Anna's heart raced. "You do?" she asked, a mixture of relief and fear flooding her chest. Grant nodded slowly, his gaze not leaving hers. "I remember my life, my company, my family, but I also remember you. You've been here for me when no one else was. You've made me see things differently." Anna felt a rush of emotions. This was the moment she had feared and hoped for all at once. Grant was back, fully aware, but she wasn't sure if he still felt the same way about her. Had their connection been real, or was it just something that had happened because of the circumstances? Grant took her hand gently, his touch warm and comforting. "I don't want to lose this," he said softly. "I don't want to lose you." Anna stared at him, her heart pounding. For a moment, everything else faded away. There was just him, and there was just her. "You won't lose me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." But as they sat together, hand in hand, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that their story was just beginning. The road ahead would be difficult, there would be obstacles, challenges, and doubts, but she knew one thing for certain: she was no longer just his nurse. She was a part of his life, and he was a part of hers. And as Grant's recovery continued, so did their bond, growing stronger with every passing day. They weren't just patient and nurse anymore. They were something more, something real. As the days passed, Anna continued to sit by Grant's bedside, watching as he made remarkable progress. His recovery was becoming more and more evident each day. He was able to sit up for longer periods, and his speech had improved drastically. But what surprised Anna the most was how quickly their bond had grown. She found herself thinking about him constantly, and with every passing day, the connection between them seemed to deepen. Grant, too, seemed to feel the change. He had been awake for weeks now, and while he still couldn't remember all the details of his life, there was something undeniable in the way he looked at her. It wasn't just gratitude for taking care of him. It was something more, something deeper that neither of them could ignore. One evening, as Anna walked into his room, she found him sitting up in bed, his eyes focused on the window. The light from the setting sun cast a warm glow over his face, and for a moment, he almost looked like the man he used to be: confident, powerful, and in control. But then he turned his gaze to Anna, and the softness in his eyes told a different story. The man in front of her wasn't the CEO who had built an empire, he was a man who had lost everything, and she was the one who had been there to help him find his way back. "Anna," he said quietly, his voice stronger than before but still filled with uncertainty. "I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for me." Anna smiled gently, taking a seat beside his bed. "You don't have to thank me, Grant. I'm just doing my job." He shook his head, his expression serious. "No. It's more than that. You've been there for me when no one else was. You didn't give up on me, even when everyone else had. I don't know why you've stuck around, but I'm glad you did." Anna's heart fluttered in her chest. She didn't know how to respond. She had stuck around because she cared for him, but she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge it. She couldn't afford to get emotionally attached to her patients. It was against everything she had been taught. But with Grant, it was different. She couldn't help the way she felt. "Grant," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "You're going to be okay. You've come so far already. You just have to keep going." He looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and something else, something she couldn't quite put into words. He reached out, taking her hand in his. "I don't know what the future holds, Anna. But I want you to know that I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose you." Anna's breath caught in her throat. She had been trying so hard to keep her feelings in check, but in that moment, she realized that she couldn't anymore. There was something undeniable between them, something that went beyond her role as his nurse. "You won't lose me," she whispered, squeezing his hand. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." But even as she said those words, a part of her wondered what would happen when Grant was fully recovered. Would he remember who he was? Would he still feel the same way about her when he regained his life and his empire? Or would this all just feel like a fleeting moment and to me a brief connection that would fade away once he was back to his old life? Grant's eyes softened as if he could sense her inner turmoil. "I know it's not easy," he said, his voice gentle. "But I need you to know that I'm not the same person I was before. What we have, it's real to me." Anna felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had known, deep down, that their bond was more than just a nurse-patient relationship. But hearing him say it out loud made everything feel so much more real. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just a temporary connection. Maybe there was something more between them. Over the next few weeks, as Grant's recovery continued, they spent more and more time together. Anna would come in every day, sitting with him as he worked on his rehabilitation. They talked about everything and nothing, his business, her hopes for the future, the things they had both lost along the way. Each conversation brought them closer, and each day, Anna found herself falling deeper for him. But even as their relationship grew stronger, Anna couldn't help but feel the weight of the future hanging over them. Once Grant was fully recovered, what would happen? Would he go back to his old life, his empire, his business? And what about her? She was just a nurse, a simple woman with a modest life. Could there ever be a place for someone like her in the world Grant inhabited? One evening, as Anna was preparing to leave for the day, Grant stopped her at the door. "Anna," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "There's something I need to tell you." Anna turned to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. She had a feeling she knew what was coming, but she wasn't ready to hear it. "Not yet." "I don't know what the future holds," Grant said, his eyes searching hers. "But I know one thing for sure. I don't want to live it without you." Anna's breath caught in her throat as the weight of his words sank in. She had been trying to protect herself, trying to keep her feelings in check, but now, in this moment, there was no denying what was between them. She didn't know what the future held either, but she knew that for the first time in a long time, she was ready to face it with him. "I don't want to lose you either," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. And in that moment, everything else faded away. All the doubts, all the fears, they didn't matter anymore. Because for the first time, Anna and Grant both knew that they had found something real, something worth fighting for. Weeks passed, and Grant's recovery continued at an impressive pace. Each day, Anna watched as the man she had known only in a hospital bed transformed before her eyes. He was no longer the fragile patient, weak and dependent on machines. He was becoming the man he once was, the powerful CEO, with the strength and presence that had made him a legend in the business world. But something had shifted, something that neither of them could ignore. Their bond, forged in the depths of recovery, was real. And it was growing deeper. As Grant regained more of his memory, the physical changes were clear. He began to sit up longer, speak more fluently, and even take short walks around the hospital. But it was the emotional side of his recovery that both fascinated and confused Anna. The man who had once been known for his ruthless business dealings and cold, calculating demeanor had softened. He was more open, more vulnerable, especially with her. He'd talked to her about his past, his fears, and even his regrets. It was a side of him that Anna had never expected to see. One evening, as Anna sat by his bedside, Grant looked at her with a serious expression. His progress had been remarkable, but there was something else on his mind, something he had been holding back. "Anna," he said quietly, his voice still carrying the weight of everything they had been through together. "I need to tell you something." Anna turned to face him, her heart immediately picking up speed. She had become so close to him over the past few weeks, but this was different. There was an intensity in his eyes that made her stomach flutter. She nodded, urging him to continue. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said before," Grant continued, his gaze never leaving hers. "About not wanting to lose me. Well, I don't want to lose you either. And I don't think I can go back to the life I had before. Not without you in it." Anna's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't sure if she was ready for this, but the truth was undeniable. She had already fallen for him. Deeply. But there were so many uncertainties. Could a relationship between them work? Could she fit into his world, with all its expectations and responsibilities? Anna started, but he interrupted her, gently squeezing her hand. "I know this isn't easy," he said softly, "but we've been through so much together. I'm not asking for you to make any decisions now. I just need you to know how I feel. And I don't want you to think this is just some fleeting moment. What we have, it's real to me." Anna looked at him, her heart racing. She had been so focused on helping him recover, so consumed by the idea of getting him back to health, that she hadn't allowed herself to fully acknowledge what was happening between them. She had tried to keep things professional, but every time she looked at him, her heart told her something else. "I care about you too, Grant," Anna whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "More than I should." Grant's expression softened, and for a moment, there was silence between them. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was as if they were both finally acknowledging the truth. Their connection had been inevitable, and now it was undeniable. Over the next few days, their relationship deepened. Anna began to let go of her fears and doubts, realizing that no matter what the future held, she didn't want to live without Grant by her side. And Grant, for the first time in a long while, felt truly alive, not just because of his physical recovery, but because of the woman who had stood by him through it all. The woman who had given him hope when he thought he had lost everything. One night, as Anna finished her shift, she walked into Grant's room to find him sitting by the window, staring out at the city lights. He looked so at peace, yet so deeply lost in thought. As she approached, he turned to her, a soft smile on his face. "Anna," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I've been thinking a lot about the future. And I don't want to go through it alone. I want to build something with you. Not just because I'm grateful for everything you've done for me, but because I truly care about you. I want to be with you." Anna stood there, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it. This was the moment she had been waiting for, but at the same time, it was terrifying. She had never imagined she would be here, in this place, with him, someone so powerful, so important. But she couldn't deny her feelings. She had never been more sure of anything in her life. "Grant," she said softly, walking over to him, "I want that too. I want to be with you. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I want to face it with you." And just like that, everything fell into place. The fears, the doubts, the uncertainty, everything faded away. In that moment, Anna realized that she didn't need to know everything about the future. She didn't need to have all the answers. All she needed was to be present, to embrace what was happening between them. Grant reached for her hand, pulling her closer. "Then let's face it together," he said softly, his voice full of emotion. Anna smiled, feeling the weight of the moment. She had never imagined that her life would take such a turn, but now, with Grant by her side, she felt ready for whatever was to come. As they stood there, hand in hand, the future was uncertain. But for the first time, it didn't matter. They had found each other, and that was enough. As the weeks passed, Anna and Grant's relationship grew stronger, and with each passing day, their bond became more undeniable. Grant was recovering faster than anyone had expected, and Anna's role in his life had shifted from just a nurse to someone he relied on, someone he could no longer imagine living without. But even as their connection deepened, Anna still couldn't shake the worry about the future. They both knew that once Grant was fully recovered, he would have to go back to his life, his empire, his business, the world that had once consumed him. And what about her? Could their relationship survive once the reality of their differences became clear? It was late one afternoon when Grant decided to confront the question that had been lingering in his mind for days. He had been thinking about it constantly, their future, and he knew that he needed to talk to Anna about it. He had spent so much time recovering, so much time rebuilding his life, but now he realized that the next step wasn't about getting his empire back. It was about getting the one thing that mattered most, her. When Anna entered his room, she was surprised to find Grant sitting on the edge of his bed, looking more serious than she had ever seen him. The once untouchable CEO, who had always been so composed and in control, now looked vulnerable and uncertain. "Anna," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I've been thinking a lot about the future. I've been thinking about what comes next, for both of us." Anna's heart skipped a beat as she walked over to him. She could feel the weight of the moment, the heaviness of the question hanging between them. She sat down beside him, unsure of what he was about to say. "Grant, whatever happens, I'm with you," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "We've come this far together. I don't want to lose you now." Grant smiled, though it was tinged with a hint of sadness. He took her hand gently, holding it in his as he looked into her eyes. "I don't want to lose you either," he said quietly. "But I need to be honest with you. I've spent so much time focusing on my career, on building this empire. But what I've realized is that none of it matters if I don't have the right person by my side. I don't want to go back to that life without you." Anna's breath caught in her throat. She had always known that Grant was different, that there was more to him than the powerful businessman the world saw. But hearing him say it out loud was something else entirely. She had been afraid that once he was fully recovered, he would slip back into his old ways, back into a life that didn't include her. "Grant, are you saying that you want to change your life?" Anna asked, her voice trembling. "You want to leave everything behind?" Grant nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "Yes," he said softly. "I've learned a lot over the past few months. About myself, about what really matters. And what matters to me is you. I want a life with you, not the life I had before. I want something real." Anna's heart swelled with emotion. She had never expected this, never expected him to make such a profound decision, one that would change everything. She had always felt like an outsider in his world, like she could never truly belong. But now, with him beside her, she felt like maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for them. "Grant, are you sure about this?" Anna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't just about what we've been through together. It's about more than that. It's about who we want to be. Together." Grant squeezed her hand, his voice filled with certainty. "I'm sure, Anna. I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Anna stared at him, her heart racing. This was the moment. The moment when everything could change for them both. She had always believed in the power of love, but this was more than love. It was trust, it was commitment, it was a future built on mutual respect and understanding. "Then let's make it happen," she said softly, her voice full of determination. "Let's face the future together." Grant smiled, the weight that had been pressing down on both of them lifting as he pulled her closer. "Together," he repeated, his voice steady and strong. And in that moment, Anna knew that they had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. They were no longer two people just going through the motions of life. They were a team, bound together by their shared experiences and their commitment to one another. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Grant by her side, Anna was ready to face it, no matter what it held. The future was still uncertain, still full of challenges and obstacles, but for the first time in a long time, Anna felt like she had found a place where she truly belonged. And for Grant, he had found something even more valuable than his empire chance at a real life, with the woman who had brought him back to life. As the days went by, Anna and Grant's life began to take shape in ways they had never imagined. Grant's recovery had reached a point where he could now leave the hospital, and the prospect of starting over together was becoming more real. Anna had been by his side through the entire journey, and now, as they looked toward the future, it seemed like anything was possible. But with the promise of a new life came challenges that neither of them had anticipated. Grant had made the decision to step away from his empire, but there were people in his life who wouldn't easily let go of their control over him. The first test of their commitment came when Grant received a call from his business partners, demanding his immediate attention. It was clear that they were not happy with his decision to step back from the company, and they made it known that they expected him to return to the board. Anna watched as the frustration and stress grew on Grant's face. She could see the familiar tension that had once consumed him. The drive to prove himself, to live up to the expectations of others, was still there, lingering beneath the surface. But now, he had a choice. And this time, it wasn't just about the business. It was about his future with her. Grant, Anna said softly, her voice filled with concern. You don't have to do this. You've already made your decision. You don't owe them anything. Grant sighed, running his hand through his hair. He looked at her, his eyes filled with uncertainty. I don't know if I can just walk away. It's not that simple. I've spent my whole life building that company. It's a part of me. Anna reached out, gently placing her hand on his. I understand, she said. But it's not the company that defines you. It's who you are now. The man you've become through all of this. You've already proved yourself, Grant. Now it's time to live for you. Not for anyone else. Grant looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, he truly saw her the woman who had stood by him, not for his wealth or his status, but for who he was beneath it all. The realization hit him like a wave, and suddenly, everything seemed clearer. You're right, Grant said, his voice steady. It's time for me to let go. Let go of everything that doesn't matter and focus on what does. Anna smiled, relief washing over her. She had never doubted him, but she knew that it wasn't going to be easy for him to break free from his past. Yet, she had never been more certain that this was the right path for both of them. Later that day, they made the decision together. Grant would step away from his business and focus on a new life, one built on love, trust, and the future they wanted to create. They didn't know what that future would look like yet, but they knew they would face it together. As the weeks passed, they found their rhythm. Grant started working on projects that mattered to him, things he had put aside for years. He began to rebuild his life from the ground up, but this time, it was on his terms. And through it all, Anna remained by his side, the one constant in his life. They started to make plans, real plans for the future, and it felt like they were finally building something that was theirs alone. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of their new apartment, watching the sunset, Grant turned to Anna with a smile. I never thought I'd be here, he said, his voice soft. I never thought I'd be happy again, but now. I can't imagine my life without you in it. Anna smiled back, her heart swelling with love. I feel the same way, she said. We've been through so much, but we're stronger for it. And now, we get to write our own story. As they sat together, the world seemed to fade away. The future, once uncertain, now felt full of possibilities. They were no longer bound by the past, no longer tied to the expectations of others. They had each other, and that was enough. Together, they could face anything. And for the first time, Anna felt a sense of peace. They had built something real, something worth fighting for. A love that had been tested, and a future that was theirs to create. As the months passed, Anna and Grant's life began to settle into a rhythm, a new normal that neither of them had expected but both had come to cherish. They had successfully built a life together, free from the pressures of Grant's former empire and the expectations that had once weighed him down. But just as they were starting to feel secure, the past came knocking in the most unexpected way. It all began when a lawyer's letter arrived one morning, addressed to Grant. Anna watched as he opened it, his face growing increasingly pale as he read the contents. She could feel the tension in the air as he set the letter down and looked at her, his eyes filled with a mix of frustration and disbelief. "What's wrong?" Anna asked, her voice filled with concern as she moved to sit beside him. Grant took a deep breath, his hand shaking slightly. "It's from my old business partners. They want me to come back. They want to force me back into the company. And if I don't, they'll take legal action to seize control of everything." Anna felt her stomach drop. She had known this day might come, but she hadn't expected it so soon. She had hoped that the decision to step away from the business would be final, but now it seemed like everything they had worked for was in jeopardy. "Grant, we've been through so much already," Anna said softly, her heart aching for him. "You don't need to go back. You don't have to give them that power over you again." Grant's jaw tightened as he stood up, pacing the room. "It's not just about the power. It's about what they're trying to take from me. This company, it's everything I've built. But I can't just let them ruin what we have now, Anna. I won't go back to being the man I was before." Anna walked over to him, placing a hand gently on his arm. "You're not that man anymore. You don't need to prove anything to them. You've already proven who you are to me, and that's all that matters." Grant looked down at her, his expression softening. "I know. But I can't let them win. I need to protect what I've worked for, what I've earned." Anna took a deep breath, thinking carefully about the next words she would say. She knew how much this company meant to him, but she also knew that he was more than just the business he had built. She had seen the man he had become, the man who was willing to let go of everything for a chance at a real life with her. "Grant, what you've built doesn't define you," she said quietly. "You are more than your company. You've already shown that by choosing to walk away from it. If you go back now, it will be like you're giving up on everything we've built together." Grant's eyes met hers, and for the first time in a long while, he seemed uncertain. The weight of the decision was heavy on his shoulders, and Anna could see the internal struggle playing out in his eyes. But then, slowly, he nodded. "You're right," he said softly, his voice filled with conviction. "I can't go back to that life. I can't lose what we have now. This is the life I want. I choose this life. I choose you." Anna smiled, relief flooding through her. She had known that Grant was strong, but hearing him say the words aloud made her heart soar. They had both faced their pasts, their fears, and now, they were ready to build a future together. Later that evening, as they sat on the balcony of their apartment, the city lights twinkling in the distance, Grant turned to Anna with a soft smile. "I never thought I'd find peace," he said quietly, his voice full of emotion. "But with you, I feel like I have everything I need. You've given me something I never knew I was missing." Anna looked at him, her heart full. "And you've given me the same. I never thought I could love someone this much." They sat there together, the quiet of the evening surrounding them. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt afraid. They had faced the hardest parts of their lives and come out stronger for it. And as they looked ahead, they knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, united, stronger, and more in love than ever before. Months passed, and Anna and Grant's life together became a beautiful blend of love, growth, and trust. Grant had made the decision to stay away from his old business life, and although the transition wasn't always easy, he was happier than he had been in years. He spent his time focusing on his passions, giving back to the community, and most importantly, being with Anna. Together, they found joy in the simple moments, the quiet mornings, the late-night conversations, and the shared dreams for the future. Anna had always been focused on her work, always believing in the importance of caring for others. But now, with Grant by her side, she realized that she had a different kind of future to look forward to, that was built on love, partnership, and mutual support. As they continued to grow together, their connection became deeper than either of them had ever expected. One afternoon, as they sat together in their favorite park, Grant turned to Anna with a look that was both nervous and excited. "Anna," he began, his voice filled with emotion. "There's something I've been thinking about for a while now, and I need you to know that it's not something I take lightly." Anna looked at him, her heart skipping a beat. "What is it, Grant?" He smiled softly, his eyes never leaving hers. "I've spent so much time focusing on building my empire, trying to prove myself to others, that I forgot to focus on what really matters. And now, I know that what matters is you. You're the one I want to build my future with. You're the one I want to spend the rest of my life with." Anna felt her breath catch in her chest, her heart racing. She had never expected to hear those words from him, but now, as she looked into his eyes, she knew that this was everything she had ever wanted. "Grant," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "I want that too. I want a future with you. I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He took a deep breath and, with a smile, reached into his pocket. From it, he pulled out a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a stunning ring, its diamonds sparkling in the afternoon sun. "Anna," Grant said, his voice steady but full of love. "Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in Anna's eyes as she looked at the ring, her heart overwhelmed with happiness. It was everything she had ever dreamed of: love, trust, and a future they would build together. "Yes, Grant," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I'll marry you." The moment the words left her mouth, Grant pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. It felt like the world had shifted, like everything had fallen into place. They were no longer bound by their pasts or by the expectations of others. They were free to build their future, side by side. As they stood there, embracing, Anna realized that this was only the beginning. The journey ahead would be full of challenges and unexpected turns, but they would face it all together. Their love had been tested, and now it was stronger than ever, and as Grant kissed her gently, Anna knew that this was the love she had always dreamed of, the kind of love that didn't come easily, but the kind of love that would last a lifetime. Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they had found something that was real, something that would withstand the tests of time. And as they looked ahead, their hearts full of love and hope, they knew that their story was just beginning.